What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Guiding Keys, the story of Kingdom Hearts, presented by the Unlockables podcast. My name is Eric, and I have been your guide on this fantastic journey that we've been through in the Kingdom Hearts franchise, in the Kingdom Hearts universe, and through the wonderfully creative mind of series director and creator Tetsuya Nomura. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in wherever, whenever in time and space you might be located. It means the absolute world to me that you're here to check out what is going on the Unlockables and to listen to the story of Kingdom Hearts. It is a project that has ballooned in size and scope. It is now 17 hours long with, I believe, 9 episodes in a handy playlist on Spotify. Perhaps you're going on a beach vacation and you can listen to the dulcet sounds of my voice for 17 hours if you think you can handle my voice for 17 hours, or handle the ravings of a madman who is trying to explain the story of Kingdom Hearts in its simplest terms and trying to connect all of the lingering plot threads throughout all of the games to take us into the launch of Kingdom Hearts 4 whenever that game decides to eventually come out. At the rate we're going, this series might still be ongoing when that game decides to come out. It just depends on how far in development they were when that game was announced. But we're not here to talk about Kingdom Hearts 4 today. We're here to talk about our next game, and that is, of course, Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2, a Kingdom Hearts title for the Nintendo DS. Before we talk about this one, though, on our last series of episodes, we talked about Kingdom Hearts 2, one of my favorite games of all time, my favorite Kingdom Hearts game in the series, a game that I think is the pinnacle of the series, and a game that I think exudes the best qualities of Kingdom Hearts. That game ended up being 5 episodes, more episodes than the other 2 combined, which were Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories. And that was a good one. I think I broke that one down pretty adequately. I got a chance to talk about why I love this game so much and why I think it really caps off those first couple of games, the first trilogy, very, very beautifully. But we know that the story does not end there. Nomura hid a hidden movie at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2 to tease the next game in the series, but that game is not quite here yet. That movie relates to Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, which is one title away. We have to get through this game first. Now, normally the order of these games, at least in the Kingdom Hearts collection, I believe, has you checking out 358 Days Over 2 first, but that's not the way I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it in chronological release order, so I wanted to tell the story of Kingdom Hearts 2 first. And then we can fit the story of Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2 nicely into that narrative, because this game actually does take place in the year span between Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories and Kingdom Hearts 2. So I think it's perfect to do it here. And this title gives us a lot of interesting insight to some of the things that happened in 2 and Chain of Memories. It gives us a lot deeper insight into the group of villains that we've come to know as Organization 13. So there's no reason to wait any longer. Let's go ahead and kick the tires and start our discussion of Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. Let's start off simply by clearing up any confusion around the pronunciation of the title of the game. The official pronunciation of the title is Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. That is how it is on all official marketing materials. That's how it was on the commercials. And that was how the development team and Nomura himself pronounced the game in interviews, even though on the DS case it's written 358/2 days, as some people read it as 358 over 2 days, 358 over 2 days, 358 divided by 2 days. Its official title is 358 Days Over 2. And why it is called that, we will explain once we get into gameplay and the story. This game was developed by HAND, which stands for Hokkaido Artists Network and Development, in collaboration with Square Enix, and was published by Square Enix. Days was released in Japan on May 30th, 2009, North America, September 29th, 2009, in the European territories, October 9th, 2009, and in the Australian and PAL regions in October 22nd, 2009. It had a special collector's edition Nintendo DSi that was created and released alongside the game, which was designed by Tetsuya Nomura himself. Highly urge you to go and look up that DS because it is really, really cool, as are most of the peripheral consoles and things that Nomura designs for his games. Absolutely amazing looking Nintendo DS. Days was also included in the 1.5 HD Remix collection on the PlayStation 3 as a roughly 3-hour cutscene collection. It was considered for the remake treatment like Chain of Memories, but this idea would eventually be scrapped. Critical reception for this game on Metacritic, it's currently sitting at a 75 out of 100. Famitsu gave it a 36 out of 40. Game Informer an 8 out of 10. GameSpot a 8 out of 10. And IGN gave it an 8 out of 10. So pretty good reviews across the board. Metacritic sitting a little bit lower than some of its contemporaries. This game, when it came out, was originally criticized for its watered-down control scheme. It was a little bit more watered down from a proper KH title because of hardware limitations. And it was criticized for the interesting directions that the story was taken in, as these games normally are. As of this writing, Days has sold roughly 1.49 million units. It's tied for the 51st highest selling game on the Nintendo DS, alongside Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, Dragon Quest Monsters Joker, and a remake of Dragon Quest V. All of these titles are sitting right around the 1.5 million unit mark on their respective game rankings. Despite that, the game was nominated for 7 awards in the Nintendo 2009 Power Awards. It was the Nintendo DS Game of the Year, Best Sound, Voice Acting, Best Adventure Game, Best Nintendo DS Graphics, Best New Character, Best Story Writing, and Overall Game of the Year. And on February 16th, 2010, it was announced that 358 Days Over 2 won all 7 of the awards that it was nominated for in the reader's vote. So despite the lower rating on Metacritic, the not as spectacular sales compared to the rest of the series, readers really like this, and it was probably due to the strength of the Kingdom Hearts brand in Japan that it won all of these awards. So as we always tend to do with these Guiding Keys episodes, I always open up with some of my initial thoughts, my personal feelings, my pontifications about the game, because I can't help but do that, and it kind of sets the expectation for you guys going in about where I land on some of these titles. I'm a little bit more favorable coming off of my all-time favorite game, Kingdom Hearts 2. This one's going to be a little bit rougher because, as we'll see in the development history, in the gameplay, the hardware of the Nintendo DS was, while it was more powerful than the Game Boy Advance, was still pretty limited for what Nomura and Hand were trying to do. This game overall is fascinating. I didn't play either of the DS titles, which includes Days and Kingdom Hearts Recoded, until after I had played the 3DS title, which is Dream Drop Distance. That's the game that sets up Kingdom Hearts 3. That game comes a little bit later in the timeline. We'll be getting to that one a couple games down the road. I had time when I was in college to go back and play these, and so I did. I picked them up both for pretty cheap. That is Recoded and Days. I picked them up both at my local GameStop when I was living downtown in Chicago. And I would say at this time, my Kingdom Hearts fandom was probably at another peak, just because we were starting to get teasers for Dream Drop Distance. We were going over all of the stuff in the Blank Points, one of the secret movies in Birth by Sleep that we'll talk about. So we were trying to figure out what was going to be the next step in this. And the conclusion of the series was starting to come into focus around this time, that this first initial arc of Kingdom Hearts is the Xehanort Saga, or the Dark Seeker Saga. So having not played these games, after I played Dream Drop Distance, I opted to pick them up and just fill in any information or any story that I might have missed. I was fully on board. I was determined to get to Kingdom Hearts 3 with as much information in my hands as possible, as much understanding of the story as possible. And we'll see this too when I start talking, when we get to a future episode on the mobile game, about how invested I was in the mobile game for a couple years of my life, until I just fell off because I couldn't take it anymore. As you could probably tell, if you listen to my Kingdom Hearts 2 episodes, I have a lot of love for Roxas as a character. One thing you have to know about Days is that this is a game that focuses on Roxas's time with Organization 13. If you remember back to the Kingdom Hearts 2 episodes, Roxas was a part of Organization 13. That game touches a little bit on his final days with the organization, how he ended up leaving them, being kidnapped by Riku, put in the virtual Twilight Town until he reunited with Sora. So this game really fills in the block of story of that year from when Sora was in Castle Oblivion to when he woke up in Twilight Town. And during this year, Roxas was an active force in the world. And just to touch on the whole year timeline thing, we know the events of Kingdom Hearts 2, like we said, happened roughly 1 year after the events of Kingdom Hearts 1. So the title makes sense if you take the 7 days that Roxas had that he spends in the virtual Twilight Town before reuniting with Sora. He would have about 358 days of time that he would have spent with Organization 13. Add 7 to 358 days, and you get 365 is roughly that's the length of a year, unless you're in a leap year. I don't think, maybe leap years don't exist. I don't know. When it comes to the titles, the numbering, when Nomura uses numbers in his titles and things like that, everything, I know the titles might seem weird, but everything connects to, everything is referencing something else. And when you spend time thinking about why he does the things that he does, it actually makes a lot of sense. Now, big questions going into this game was, we know what happens to Roxas ultimately at the end of his journey in Kingdom Hearts 2. So why would we care about his time with the organization if we knew what happened to him? It's really like a Halo Reach scenario where we know what happens to Reach because when the events of Halo start, Master Chief is the last Spartan, Reach has been destroyed. The characters in Halo talk about the destruction of Reach as this huge event practically every single game. So this game has to somehow accomplish that same feeling and make us care about the journey when we already know what the destination is. And we'll see how Nomura does that when we talk about the story. More distressing, I think, about this game specifically is that the way that Tetsuya Nomura intended this story to be experienced is not the way that anybody jumping into the series today is probably going to experience the game. Right now, the most common way to experience this game is via the cutscene collection. It's not that 358 Days Over 2 is hard to find. I checked the secondary market, and there are copies of this game going for about $10. So it's not a very highly sought after game. But the problem is just having DS hardware to be able to play the game to begin with. I know that since they discontinued making the Nintendo 3DS, that 3DSs can be expensive and difficult to find. So only the most diehard fans are going to seek out and play the game as it was originally intended. And I think that is kind of disappointing because if you haven't learned anything about Nomura by listening to this show, then you should at least know that everything he does is very intentional in the way that he wants you to experience things. So this product, well, I have obvious issues with the way it presents and some of the gameplay and stuff, was the way that he wanted you to experience this story. And I don't think you get the same connection with the characters, with Roxas as a character, with his relationship with Axel, with the things that happen within the organization, if you aren't spending that 20, 25 hours playing this game and you just kind of shorten all that stuff into a 3-hour cutscene that isn't really that cohesive, because there are cutscenes in the game, but a lot of stuff also takes place in dialogue boxes as well. So there's a mix there, like how there was for Chain of Memories. And not being able to play the game and spend time as Roxas and do the missions as him and experience the things as he did, I think lessens the value of his character overall. And it's just disappointing to me that Square hasn't gone out of their way to make this experience available to play. But again, it was made on the DS under different circumstances with a different developer. It's not just a simple, port it over, especially because it utilizes both of the screens for the Nintendo DS. So just the lack of making the game available and the lack of it being able to be experienced in its original form is disappointing, much like the GBA version of Chain of Memories, which I've said is the superior version of that game. With so much of gaming history already, everybody saw that article. I don't know if it was a Kotaku article or whatever that said roughly 80% of games are unavailable legally for people to experience. And I think that's Kingdom Hearts, 358 Days, it falls in that category. And it's really disappointing that we're at the age now where us older people, especially content creators, want to go back and be able to experience these games and talk about them, because there's this community, this creator community that's been built up around video games. And video games are unlike movies or seasons of TV, where they want those available for everybody to access anywhere, anytime they want. And video games, just by their nature, we haven't gotten to that point yet. I think we're getting better about it, but the video game companies are only going to do it if there's incentive for them to do that. And there's obviously no incentive for Square Enix to make this available in its original form. It leaves the game in an interesting place in terms of its legacy and its relationship to the overall series. And we'll touch on that in a bit when we talk about development, because God, the post Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Fantasy 12 Square Enix was just absolutely insane. That being said, some of the things that Nomura tried to do with this game are super cool. Getting time to spend with the bad guys as the premise of the video game is super cool. Wanting it to be a multiplayer experience on the DS, a Kingdom Hearts multiplayer experience on the DS, which had never been done before, to be able to play with your friends is a really cool concept. And we'll see when we talk about the atmosphere at Square Enix at the time why he decided to take this route to tell this story. Talk a bit about Days gameplay and its presentation. The intention was to bring the console Kingdom Hearts experience to the Nintendo DS. That's what Nintendo wanted. That is what Nomura had intended to do. And again, as we'll see in the development section, this was rough. It was very, very difficult to do this because of the hardware limitations of the DS carts and the DS itself. This game, as I mentioned before, centers around Roxas and his time in Organization 13. And the game is divided into 358 days, as the title suggests. And on each day, he can undertake a mission from a list of missions provided to him by Syx, who is one of the organization members who basically runs the day-to-day things. So it's very much like Roxas gets up, it's day whatever, he goes on a mission, and his mission could be one of several things that we'll talk about. And there are roughly 150 missions throughout the game. After certain key missions denoted by a Keyblade symbol in the mission list, the plot is advanced, time skips occur, days pass by, important cutscenes take place to advance the plot of the game forward. And speaking of missions, there are different mission objectives. As a Keyblade wielder, Roxas's main objective, as we learned in Kingdom Hearts 2, was to collect hearts to form Kingdom Hearts for Organization 13. So some missions focus on him defeating a set number of Heartless to gather these hearts. One mission type is Recon, where Roxas and another organization member will scout out a new world. They gather intel on the world so they know more about it. Another mission type is a race through the world to collect organization emblems. So it's kind of like a quick obstacle course. You have to like plot your route through the world, do some platforming, try and grab the emblems as quickly as possible. And other mission types task you with hunting down a specific large or dangerous boss Heartless. Most of these missions have a minimum completion threshold required to complete it, and once you hit that threshold, you can return to the organization HQ. A lot of missions have this secondary threshold of completion that is often more challenging to complete, whether it's fighting extra Heartless, whether it's fighting a particularly difficult Heartless after clearing all the other waves, whether it's finding all the emblems in a really strict time frame. And these are really difficult, but they boast greater rewards, which you get at the end of your missions. And this was included to encourage replayability, to revisit missions, revisit levels when you got different skills, when you could power up a little bit more and clear the missions faster. Upon completion of a mission, you get a reward screen, which gives you mission rewards like items, heart points, which are used in the shop, money, which is also used in the shop, and experience. Now, the one thing that I really, really like that Days does is the way it treats its leveling and its RPG systems. And to have a unique take on this, Nomura came up with the panel system. So hang on, this gets a little bit complicated, but it's really cool that the way this works. It's one of this game's brightest points, and it's something you just don't see in RPGs. The panel system is how you manage your gear, your skills, your magic, your items, pretty much everything in this game. The best way I can kind of explain it, it's a marriage of Tetris with the junction systems and the materia systems from 7 and 8. There are a series of empty slots on the lower DS screen that you unlock more of as you progress through the story, doing missions, unlocking stuff, getting more experience, stuff like that. Every single ability, weapon, level, skills, magic, everything are a panel, a little square, and you have a growing inventory of these panels as you play through the game and you unlock more. So instead of gaining a level when your experience bar fills up, you will gain a level panel to which you can then slot into one of the empty panels and make Roxas's level go up by 1. You might think, oh, well, you're going to need a literal shit ton of level panels to make Roxas a high level. And you would be correct, but there are some panels that multiply panels that are attached to them. So in the same way that materia can attach, you can have materia in Final Fantasy VII that can attach to one another, you have panels that have blank slots that take up more squares in your panel system, and you can link panels to them. So let's just say I have like a level doubler panel that has like 4 empty slots that I can link to it. I can put 4 level panels in there, and it'll double the level of all those panels, making Roxas 8 levels stronger instead of 4 levels. And you get awarded these level multipliers throughout the game. You can buy them from the shop. You get them after particularly difficult missions, so make sure that your level is scaling appropriately as the story goes on. Magic panels give you spells. The more magic panels you equip, the more spells you have, and you can augment them the same way you can with levels, with panels that level them up to do more damage or give you multiple casts of a single spell. And this is the biggest departure from Kingdom Hearts 2. This makes magic a finite resource. It is not a refillable font of MP that you can just wait out and use when it refills. And this is by far the most interesting aspect of Days, because magic forces you to check your panels after basically every mission and kind of make sure you have enough resources going into the mission, because some Heartless are affected by certain types of magic, and that will sometimes be denoted in the mission debriefing, where it'll be like, you can expect a fire plant Heartless to show up. Make sure you bring blizzard magic. So there are sometimes little hints like that. The panel system is very cool. It often forced me to redo my setup and kind of move around. And as you unlock more blank spaces for your panels, you get more interesting configurations. And a lot of those, like I mentioned, the level multiplier panels are very weird shapes. They're not just lines up and down, it becomes very much like a game of Tetris to interlink all of your different panels together to be able to get the maximum build. And it adds a layer of strategy that isn't really present in many other Kingdom Hearts games. I mean, obviously you had the deck building and Chain of Memories, but I told you that there's very easy ways to break the deck building system. The panel system is just so unique, and it's something that I haven't experienced in any other game before. It's very cool. Despite all this, though, I have qualms about the combat in this game. The combat feels very unbalanced. It's less weighty than a standard Kingdom Hearts 2 experience. I found myself enemies taking forever to whittle down. Some enemies have weaknesses or immunities to magic that aren't telegraphed if they aren't told you in the mission briefings. The biggest problem is that we talked about in Kingdom Hearts 2 how enemies, especially more powerful bosses, have revenge values where the revenge value will increase as you continue to hit and stagger them to a point where they will just break your attacks and counterattack you. Enemies do not stagger in days. They seemingly will be able to interrupt your attacks at will. And this is a big departure from the way that Kingdom Hearts combat has been before. Even in Chain of Memories, your enemies staggered. So this turns combat from this kind of like interesting tug and pull between the player and the enemy, where you had to be conscious of all the hits you were getting in before the enemy kind of counterattacked you, to this kind of hit and run guerrilla style where it didn't matter what you were doing, the enemy wasn't going to stagger and would just fire off attacks, and you could just be in the middle of a combo and it wouldn't matter. The lack of the stagger really, really hurts this combat. It turns it into this like guerrilla warfare type where you run in, get a few hits, run out, run in, get a few hits, run out, run in, get a few hits, run out. And that really is the optimal strategy here. And it doesn't feel that great to have to do this. It's just when you're sitting there wailing on an enemy, you should feel it. And when you wail on the enemies in days, you don't feel it. And they don't even feel it because you just get little sparkle effects of your weapon hitting them. They don't seem to react to it in any kind of way. And they'll just at any moment decide to just be like, oh, well, I'll attack you. And you better believe that their attacks basically have priority over all of your attacks. They will interrupt you, but you can never interrupt them unless you're like guarding. And that's basically it. The level and the progression and the way this game scales, I never felt like I was getting more powerful. Like in previous Kingdom Hearts games, like as you progress, you really feel like you start to get powerful with Sora because he's doing a lot of flash moves and he's doing a lot of damage. And Roxas's combos are really limited to like 3 or 4 strikes, and with them not doing as much damage, he just doesn't. It just doesn't feel as powerful. The progression just doesn't feel as good, and I think that's where this game really lacks. I touched briefly on the multiplayer experience. There is a multiplayer experience. You were supposed to be able to do missions with up to 4 characters with the entire roster of Organization 13 available to be played. I never got to experience this. I didn't have any friends that had the game. I bought this game like 4 or 5 years after it came out, so nobody was playing it. I got to watch some videos of the multiplayer. So this is not something I can specifically speak on, but I don't think the multiplayer adds to the story in any way. So it's not an aspect of the game that I'm going to focus on very heavily. The multiplayer will come up a little bit in development. They had to make concessions to get this to work because having 4 player control characters on screen at once was pretty taxing on the DS hardware. And that leads into like one of my final thoughts. The game definitely feels like compromises were made to get it to work, considering that the amount of characters and cutscenes that are included in this game. One of the cool things about the combat that does get incorporated is that there are the classic Final Fantasy debuffs present. Some enemies will hit you and blind you, causing like the sunglasses to appear over your head and causing your attacks to miss. Getting hit with fire will burn you and slowly drain your HP. Enemies can silence you and prevent you from casting magic. They can confuse you and make your directions all difficult to move. So it's like hitting up will send you to the left. It's very cool that this was implemented into the game. There was some little stuff like this. I don't remember if it was previous games. I do remember additional Kingdom Hearts games having like the confuse mechanic where it's like it's hard to control with your joystick. But having these things in there specifically just kind of ties it closer to Final Fantasy, in my opinion. I think that's a really cool implementation that we don't see a lot of going forward. I think this is probably its best implementation. So all in all, I think this game has gameplay issues. It's not exactly the smoothest thing to go back and play today. I like what they did, especially with the panel system. I think the way you level and manage your gear, manage your RPG stuff is a very, very cool and unique way to utilize the DS. But as a whole package, it's not great. See, I can be objective about a game franchise, a game series that I have an unreasonable amount of love for, and offer healthy criticism when I think it needs to be levied. And I think Days suffers from trying to make 3 games at once, trying to make it be multiplayer, just the DS. I think all those things play a contributing factor. That does not mean that I believe that this game was ineffective in delivering its messages and its story, because I think that Days tells one of the more underrated and heart-wrenching stories in the entire series, despite the fact that we know ultimately what ends up happening to Roxas during Kingdom Hearts 2. It very much does pull off that Halo Reach, subvert your expectations even though you know where the story is going, by throwing in a couple of wrinkles and really kind of exploring the relationship between some of the other organization members. But we'll get into that when we talk about the story, because I really want to highlight now, and if you notice, I put the gameplay before the development section on this one because I think it's important to talk about the development section afterwards so I wouldn't have to reference as much gameplay stuff in it, because the business situation with Square, what was going on after Kingdom Hearts 2 going into the late 2000s, early 2010s with new hardware, a new generation of consoles on the horizon is very, very important to understanding that. So without further ado, let's leave gameplay behind and talk a little bit about what was going on at Square after Kingdom Hearts 2 was released. Before we begin my pre-written scripted explanation of the development of 358 Days Over 2, I just wanted to give a shout out to a book that I read that really shed a lot of light on what was going on at Square during the development of these Kingdom Hearts games and development of all of Square's projects overall. I read a book titled The Legend of Kingdom Hearts by Georges J. Gruard. I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation of that name because it is French. I apologize. And it was published by Third Editions. It is a French publisher that publishes books written by a variety of different authors, mostly on video game themed content. So there was one on Kingdom Hearts. There's one on Final Fantasy 7, 6, Halo, Metal Gear. So a bunch of games that people have written different books about. And the books are absolutely gorgeous. They're these beautiful monocolor hardback editions of these books with beautiful artwork on the front. It's very striking. It looks great on your library shelf if you have one of those. So big shout out to, I'm just gonna call him Jay because I don't want to butcher the French pronunciation of it anymore. That is The Legend of Kingdom Hearts Volume 1 creation. It goes into very, very precise detail about everything that was happening at Square Enix. It features really in-depth interviews with Tetsuya Nomura, so many, dozens of members of the Kingdom Hearts team, members of Square Enix, and just the access that this person had to, especially Nomura, who is more of a, he's more reserved when he wants to talk to the media for interviews or do interviews with people. So this book is an incredible resource, not just if you're interested in Kingdom Hearts, but if you're interested in just the history of Square Enix as a whole, what was going on through the lens of what Nomura was doing and the creation of Kingdom Hearts. It's absolutely incredible. I cannot recommend it enough. So with that being said, let me just weave you a tale of what was happening at Square Enix during the late 2000s. To understand the story of the next trio of Kingdom Hearts games, it's important to understand the state of Square Enix at the time. From 2005 to 2007, Square Enix was firing on all cylinders. The releases of Final Fantasy XII and Kingdom Hearts 2 had provided the company with two more multi-million unit selling games, and Final Fantasy XI was proving to be a cash cow, generating tons of additional income. In addition, Nomura's Final Fantasy VII Advent Children was a critical success, and according to Nielsen ratings, was the most successful anime film in 2006, even beating out Hayao Miyazaki's Howl's Moving Castle. Then CEO Yoichi Wada was happy with his company's performance, but he saw storm clouds on the horizon. It's been noted in video game history that Japanese developers at the time did not make the jump to the 7th generation of consoles gracefully, and struggled to adapt compared to their Western counterparts. To counteract this coming challenge to their business success, Wada put several plans into action, for he knew that they wouldn't have million-unit sellers every year going forward. The first was to begin an intensive R&D on a new game engine, which would be the tools they would use to develop the next generation of Final Fantasy games for the PlayStation 3. This engine, infamously, would come to be known as Crystal Tools, and would be the suite of development tools Square would use to create the games in the Fabula Nova Crystallis, the expanded universe that was planned around Final Fantasy XIII. 13 was originally planned for the PS2 and had been in the early planning stages since 2003. But with the launch of the PS3 in 2006, development was shifted to focus on the new console, which would become known for being notoriously difficult to develop for due to its system architecture. Tetsuya Nomura was going to be working on both Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy Versus 13, which was slated to be a Final Fantasy game that played more like a Kingdom Hearts game. Joining him would be longtime partner in crime Yoshinori Kitase. Wada also had his teams begin working on Final Fantasy XIV, the game that would replace the aging online Final Fantasy XI, for Wada recognized that they had come to depend on the constant stream of revenue that 11 had provided. To shore up the company and give the look of confidence from the outside, Square Enix enacted two main strategies. First, and most controversial, they straight up bluffed. At E3 2006, they debuted two impressive-looking trailers for Final Fantasy XIII and Versus 13 respectively. These trailers were complete fabrications. Square Enix was still in the middle of developing Crystal Tools, which was taking significantly longer than expected and was delaying the start of development. But to give the impression that they still remained on the cutting edge of the industry and to give the PS3 a bit more firepower at launch, they decided to lie. 2. Square decided to lean heavily into the handheld market, which was strong and growing thanks to the advent of smartphones, the strength of the Nintendo DS, and the existence of the PSP. Between 2007 and 2009, Square flooded the market with handheld games, and to make this strategy successful, they relied heavily on the three pillars of their business: Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and Kingdom Hearts. During this time, there were over 50 handheld titles released, with Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest alone accounting for over 50% of sales during this period. In the center of the hurricane of business moves to ensure the company's future stood Tetsuya Nomura, who had no interest in the day-to-day business decisions of the company as long as he could continue to flex his creative muscles. He and his team were finishing up the final mix edition of Kingdom Hearts 2 for Japan, and he was eager to begin work on Final Fantasy XIII and his obsession Versus 13. But as mentioned before, Crystal Tools wasn't ready yet, so Nomura couldn't continue his work until the next-gen development engine was ready. What's more, once the Kingdom Hearts team finished work on the final mix, they wouldn't have anything to be working on. And when teams are idle, they tend to get cannibalized and put on other projects. Now, one thing you have to understand about Nomura is that he genuinely loves the people he works with. He cares for his development team like family. Over the past half-decade, he had built a dedicated team around himself who understood his creative process. And while he was a demanding director who expected perfection, he was also a friend to his colleagues and a mentor to the younger members of his team who were just starting out. Speaking of the younger members of his team, they revered Tetsuya Nomura, drinking in as much knowledge and experience from him as they could. They didn't want to work for anyone else. So to keep them busy in the meantime, Nomura had them reassigned to a different project he was involved with, Dissidia Final Fantasy, where he could keep an eye on them. Now, what to do about the rest of his team? Well, one thing you have to know about Nomura is that when he is idle, his mind goes into creative overdrive. And this is where he came up with a solution to keep his team busy and support Square's handheld push. He would make not one, not two, but 3 Kingdom Hearts games at the same time. And he wanted to get to work right away because he had a bold goal. He wanted to debut a trailer for each game at Tokyo Game Show in September 2007. So Nomura put his plan into action with blessings from his bosses. He split his Kingdom Hearts team into smaller groups and had them work on 3 separate projects. One group would team up with the Square Enix team in Osaka to work on Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, Nomura's secretive Episode 0. The Osaka team had proven themselves by taking the lead on the 3D remake of Chain of Memories, and they were eager to keep working on Kingdom Hearts projects. Another group began to work on Kingdom Hearts Coded, an episodic mobile phone game that would take advantage of emerging smartphone technology. And finally, a third group was assigned to the topic of today's episode, Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. Nintendo had been begging Square Enix for a Kingdom Hearts game on the DS, and after the success of The World Ends With You, released just a few months ago, Nomura saw the potential of the DS hardware. Believe it or not, Nomura had actually been thinking about this Kingdom Hearts DS title for quite a while now. Square Enix had experimented with the multiplayer functions of the DS before to little success, and Nomura wanted to implement this feature into his game. With the City of Final Fantasy in development at the same time, he didn't want to make another fighting game, but rather a true Kingdom Hearts cooperative multiplayer experience. And he had the perfect idea for a roster of characters. Organization 13. The game would take place during Roxas' time with the organization, and would allow friends to undertake missions together, playing as the various different members who all had unique weapons and fighting style. Despite having been somewhat involved in The World Ends With You, Nomura realized that his technical understanding of the DS wasn't up to par with his creative vision. At the time, puzzle games like Brain Age were all the rage and were appealing to a different audience beyond regular gamer. Nomura wasn't exactly thrilled with this. He wanted to make a real video game in full 3D with all the grandeur and spectacle that Kingdom Hearts had become known for. Realizing that he would need outside expertise and that one of his go-to outside studios, Jupiter, was already busy, he was recommended Hand. Hand had just finished work on Final Fantasy Fables, Chocobo Tales, and Nomura liked their way of 3D modeling on the DS. After presenting Nomura with a demo of Sora, Donald, and Goofy fighting Heartless on the DS screen, they got the green light, and Nomura started to fill them in on the details. The game would star Roxas, and be set between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 chronologically. He also informed them of the multiplayer aspect, introduced the panel system, and a few other details. It was a daunting task. Translating the Kingdom Hearts experience to the DS would not be easy. Hand quickly realized how big of a challenge this would be. Nomura wasn't one to cut corners, and they quickly ran into a serious issue. The read-only memory of the game's 256 megabyte cartridge and the working memory of the DS were simply not enough for the game as originally intended. Hand's graphical ambitions were too lofty, given that so much had to fit on the game's cartridge, in addition to nearly 3 hours of cutscenes, a record for the DS at the time, music, items, sound effects, and so much more. What's more, because of how the game functioned in multiplayer mode, all character models, levels, backgrounds, and enemies essentially had to be modeled twice to compensate for more than one player on the screen. This led Hand to scale back the graphical look of the game considerably in order to compensate. They also had to cut back the number of planned worlds, with the world based on the movie Pinocchio one of the most notable casualties. But worry not, this world would later appear in Dream Drop Distance for the 3DS. Days entered the last leg of its development in 2009, and to say it was grueling was an understatement. Several members of the core Square Enix team stayed in hotels for months across from Hand Studios to get the project across the finish line. One member even recounts a rather hilarious story where one of the planners attempted to imitate Roxas' jump, only to completely rip his pants open upon landing. The work may have been hard, but as with any team that worked on a Kingdom Hearts title, the developers truly appreciated the product they were working on, and came to view each other as family. Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2 would release on May 30th, 2009 in Japan, and September and October 2009 for the rest of the regions in the world. 10 days later, Kingdom Hearts Coded would make its debut on Japan's newest and latest smartphone. But that is a story for another time. Now that we're done with that fascinating development history, we come to the story at last. And I've been debating for several days on how to go about this. I've tried to record this story section twice, and I wasn't happy with the way it came out. So I explained to you guys earlier in the episode that the story and the gameplay, everything takes place in a series of days. So originally, I went and watched the cutscene movie included in the HD collections and wrote down everything that happened day by day, and that's the way I was going to tell the story. But that wasn't very exciting, and I wasn't very passionate and enthusiastic about it as I was recording it. It was just like, and then day 1, this happened, and then day 47, this happened, and on day 96, this happened. It didn't feel... Now, it felt like I was just listing off historical dates and historical events, and it just didn't feel like the most exciting way to be able to tell this story in the way that I kind of had before. In the other games, I've gone through all the major bullet points of the story and kind of told you guys everything that was going on at every single moment. For this, it just felt like reciting dates, and I didn't want to do that. So I actually wrote a script for the story that I'm going to read to you guys, and hopefully it makes sense, and hopefully it'll be just a more exciting way of me telling you the story. It'll sound like me orating the story to you rather than me just listing off dates, which is kind of what I'm going for. And it allowed me to organize the information in a way that I feel is cohesive, because they give you a lot of different information across different days that relates to different things that happen during the story, and might be kind of hard to line those up sometimes as to what exactly is going on. So we'll read this little story that I've written. We'll do that. And then, as we always do, I'll read some of the secret reports that we have in the game that will shed more light on what is actually going on. And I think that'll wrap up the story quite nicely. Day's story actually begins on day 255. It's been that number of days, a little over 8 months, since Roxas had come into existence in front of the mansion in Twilight Town. He recalls the events of that time with Axel, his best friend, as they sit on the ledge of the clock tower in Twilight Town, eating ice cream and watching the sunset, as had become their after-work tradition. But Roxas is distracted. Someone was missing, and he questions why she hasn't shown up yet. The she, in this context, is Xian, the 14th member of Organization 13, whom had joined just 7 days after Roxas had. Roxas's first week was a blur to him. He awoke in Twilight Town on day 1 and was immediately discovered by Xemnas, who gave him his name and told him that he could give Roxas purpose. Roxas didn't know any better. He didn't know who he was, where he was, or what he was doing. He had simply come into existence as a teenage boy with no memories, which was unique for nobodies, as they normally retained some memories from their previous lives. We know this is a unique case because Roxas had come into being the moment Sora stabbed himself with the Keyblade in Hollow Bastion to free Kyrie's heart within him. He regained his own heart shortly after, and this was responsible for the unique existence of not only Roxas, but Naminé, as we discovered in Ansem's reports from KH2. Because of these unique circumstances, Roxas was shunted to Twilight Town, a world that existed in the gray area between light and darkness. Xemnas knew immediately who Roxas was. Being the nobody of Sora meant that Roxas had the unique ability to wield the Keyblade. This power was integral for the organization's plans to gather hearts and form Kingdom Hearts, so that they could all get hearts of their own. He was brought into the fold and introduced as the 13th member of Organization 13. But Roxas wouldn't be the last. Merely 7 days later, in the Round Room, the infamous circular chamber of the organization containing 13 thrones of varying heights, Xemnas introduced the 14th member of the organization as Xian, hood drawn, entered into the middle of the chamber. But Roxas wouldn't have time to interact with her. It was time for him to begin his work for the organization. Over the next week, he went on missions with Axel, the person who had been assigned to show him the ropes, and the two began to develop a bond of friendship. This is where their tradition of eating ice cream at the clock tower was born, and was one of the defining characteristics of their friendship. Things wouldn't be this way for long. Axel, along with several other members of the organization, had new orders. They needed to staff the organization's new facility, Castle Oblivion, and this is where the events of Chain of Memories start to intersect with the plot of Days. With half of the organization members off at Castle Oblivion, it fell to Roxas to begin training Xian, fulfilling the same role Axel did when he first started going on missions for the organization. Roxas did his best, but Xian kept her hood drawn and didn't speak to him during the first few missions they spent together. These days would often end with Roxas going off to have ice cream by himself and Xian returning to the castle alone. Until one day, Roxas and Xian were tasked with hunting down a large dark-side Heartless. And in the midst of the battle, Roxas found himself outmatched, when suddenly, out of nowhere, Xian manifested a Keyblade and managed to land a killing blow, saving them both and completing the mission. When the two found out they shared this common bond of the Keyblade, they became fast friends. Roxas invited Xian to join in his after-work ritual of ice cream and watching the sunset, and he explained to her that this is what he and Axel did since they were friends, promising that when he got back from Castle Oblivion, they would all get ice cream together. That is, if Axel came back. For the next day, Roxas was informed of the news that had come back from Castle Oblivion. All of the members who were sent there had seemingly been annihilated. This shook Roxas, but he still completed his mission for the day, although upon his return, he collapsed suddenly, sinking into unconsciousness. You can probably guess why this is based on the timing of this story with that of Chain of Memories. During this time, Sora was making his way through Castle Oblivion, having his memories altered. This in turn affected Roxas. As Sora's nobody, the manipulation of his true self's memories caused him to lose consciousness. Roxas would awaken nearly 20 days later, learning that Xian had been carrying out missions in his stead, bringing him a seashell or a stone from each world she visited and leaving it at his bedside in the hopes that he would wake up soon. Roxas immediately returned to work, carrying out missions by himself without much enthusiasm, one day after the next, ending each day with ice cream at the clock tower. But to his surprise one day, Axel does return to find him there, and Roxas immediately asks him what happened at Castle Oblivion. Axel dodges the question, saying that he needed time to sort his feelings out. Regardless, Roxas was as happy as a nobody could be upon the return of his friend, quickly informing him of the promise he made to Xian that she could have ice cream with them. But now there was a new problem. Xian had gone missing. Before we can get to that though, Axel finally reports in to Saïx, the organization member who runs the day-to-day missions. Axel briefs Saïx on the annihilation of the organization traitors and the search for the other chamber, the Chamber of Waking, that we heard Xigbar mention in Kingdom Hearts 2. It is clear by this scene that Saïx has benefited from the loss of certain organization members, while wanting to find the chamber to discover Xemnas' hidden agenda. Through this conversation, we start to get the hint of a prior relationship between Axel and Saïx. Axel and Roxas use their after-work time to search for Xian, who had been missing for several days now. They stumble across her in Twilight Town on the hunt for a powerful Heartless. She explains to Roxas and Axel that she's suddenly lost the ability to use her Keyblade, and without her Keyblade, she was useless to the organization. The trio decides to go get ice cream and talk it over, where Axel comes up with a brilliant idea. If Roxas and Xian could do missions together, then Roxas could cover for the fact that Xian couldn't use her Keyblade. Saïx wasn't thrilled with this idea, but Roxas and Xian convinced him that by working together they could take down bigger threats and gather even more hearts, and Saïx relented, clearly not caring as long as hearts were being collected at a steady rate. This plan proved effective, and on the last day before Saïx was going to separate them, Roxas lent Xian his Keyblade to use for the duration of the mission. Upon completion, Xian attempted to summon her own, which worked. Excited, they met Axel at the usual spot to tell him the good news, and this quickly became normal routine for the trio of friends, lovingly referred to as the Sea Salt Trio. Now, I think there's some explanations that need to happen here. Who is Xian, and why can she use the Keyblade? This reveal comes later in the story and is delivered to us in bits and pieces, but I think it's important to tell you now to understand the remainder of the narrative. Xian isn't a nobody, but in fact a replica, part of Vexen's replica program that he was running at Castle Oblivion. She was created as a backup, a failsafe for the organization in case something happened to either Sora or Roxas. Her being and her personality are defined by Sora's memories, and since his memories were scattered in Castle Oblivion due to the organization's meddling, she absorbed some of them via her connection with Sora through Roxas, his nobody. What's more, Most of these memories are those of Kairi, his most important ones. It is for this reason she looks like Kairi in Naminé, albeit with black hair, and has a strong sense of good and justice, just like Sora. Axel and Roxas discover this truth throughout the course of the game, but I felt it important to tell you now. This also explains why she is able to use the Keyblade, having copied this ability from Roxas via his connection to Sora. Good times would not last for Xian, however. During one of her missions, she was tasked with defeating an imposter, a fake organization member who had been wearing the black coat and masquerading as one of them. Xian would come to discover that she was severely outmatched by the individual in the black coat, who would pull back his hood and reveal himself to be none other than Riku. After picking up her Keyblade and calling it a fake, he tossed it to the side and departed, and this caused Xian to spend long hours alone in her room, making her feel inferior to her fellow Keyblade wielder Roxas. A few days later, she failed another mission, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. Xian would wake up 20 days later, much to the relief of Axel and Roxas, and she would attempt to go on a mission with them, but she collapsed once again during the mission as memories of Sora and his adventures began to rush through her mind. She would come to lean on Axel and Roxas for peace of mind, treasuring the time they spent together each day, but she couldn't escape the memories, as she started having dreams she couldn't explain every night. Memories of a boy and a girl on a beach. She wondered if this was related to the memories of her life before Organization 13, and decided she needed to find out. Xian began investigating by herself, and after accessing the organization's computer mainframe without permission, she learned of Castle Oblivion. One day later, instead of going on a mission like she was told, she traveled to Castle Oblivion where she ran into Axel. Axel had recently learned the mystery of her identity thanks to Vexen's research notes that he recovered from the castle and attempted to stop her, but she wouldn't listen, progressing deeper into the castle and ultimately learning the truth about her origin. She was a replica, made for the purpose of copying the Keyblade wielder's abilities. We've come full circle to day 255, the day the game started on. Axel and Roxas were eating ice cream after work, waiting for Xian to join them, but she would never arrive. The next day, Xemnas gathered them all together and informed them that Xian had fled Organization 13 and told them all they would not be wasting time searching for her. Roxas, visibly upset, challenges Xemnas in front of everyone, but he shuts Roxas down, ending the meeting. We learned during this time that Xian has actually been in contact with Riku, meeting him on several occasions to decide what to do next. Riku bears no ill will towards her, but does express to her that she does have Sora's memories, and he will need them in order to wake up again. Because so much of her personality is based on Sora, she feels pain for this person she is connected to, and she begins to blame herself. Riku isn't going to force her to make any rash decisions, but is strongly implying that she needs to return to Sora. We also see scenes of Riku working with Diz and Naminé in order to restore Sora's memories. They've since moved Sora from Castle Oblivion to the mansion in Twilight Town, and Diz grows frustrated with the lack of progress on waking Sora up. Naminé begins to explain that as long as Xian holds some of Sora's most important memories hostage, he can never wake up. Roxas and Axel spend their time after work once again searching for the missing Xian. One day after meeting up, Roxas said that they searched everywhere they knew for her, except one spot that Roxas had never been to, Castle Oblivion. Axel, knowing more of the truth than his friend and wanting to protect Roxas from hurt, tried to deflect, saying that there was nothing left in Castle Oblivion, but Roxas insisted, and Axel begrudgingly took him. But upon entering the castle, Roxas was struck once again with an immobilizing pain in his head due to the connection that he had with Sora, who had recently been there. Axel grabbed his friend and retreated back to their HQ. The next day would yield luck, as Roxas spotted Xian in Twilight Town, attempting to convince her to return to the organization. She adamantly refused, even pointing her Keyblade at Roxas to get him to back off. Suddenly, Axel appeared, catching Xian off guard and delivering a blow to the back of her neck, knocking her unconscious. He puts Xian over his shoulder, looks at Roxas, who doesn't say a word to him, then takes her back to the organization HQ. Their friendship is becoming frayed under the weight of the secrets that Axel carries and the answers that Roxas is looking for to understand what is going on. Speaking of frayed relationships, Saïx continues to chide Axel about his relationship with Roxas and Xian, asking if he's willing to throw away their existing friendship for two nobodies who may not even be around much longer. Meanwhile, the restoration of Sora's memory has come to a complete halt. Diz presses nominate for answers, and nominate answers truthfully. Some of Sora's memories have become completely absorbed by Xian, making it impossible for him to wake up and for her to complete her work. Diz, growing impatient, decides it's time for the gloves to come off. He instructs Riku to bring Xian to Sora by any means necessary. At the same time, Roxas makes a particularly risky move. He initiates a meeting with Xemnas alone in the throne room. He expresses his concern for his friend. Xemnas, ever the silver-tongued devil, assures Roxas that Xian is a valued member of the organization, and then Roxas asks a question that is really on his mind. Who is Sora? Xemnas pauses before telling him that Sora is the connection between him and Xian, and then tells Roxas to get back to work and stop being distracted. The trio of friends try to pick up the pieces, meeting for ice cream one day after work in silence. Despite the issues between all of them and what is happening as the days pass, they still cherish their time with one another. Roxas and Xian get back to work and resume missions as usual. But something strange is starting to happen. Roxas feels his strength waning. Each day that passes, he finds it more and more difficult to wield the Keyblade, and any fighting for even short periods of time leaves him winded. Meanwhile, Xian is only growing in strength, fighting and moving like Roxas used to, striking down opponents in a single blow. While Roxas struggles to understand what is happening to him, Xian understands perfectly. She isn't just taking memories via her connection to Roxas. Now she's starting to take his power as well, growing her own strength at the expense of his. Roxas doesn't realize this, but Xian does, understanding that her close proximity to him is draining him of his energy. Doing the only thing she could to help him, Xian left the organization once again, with Riku's words at the forefront of her mind. Xemnas would take this time to reveal the full extent of the replica program to the rest of the organization members, who were beginning to grow suspicious of Xian's actions and continued disappearances. Xemnas told them that the intent behind the replica program was to have a vessel that could copy the Keyblade wielder's powers and absorb his scattered memories. This would allow them to have the power they needed to complete Kingdom Hearts. Roxas couldn't believe what he was hearing. He and Xian both had been told they were special nobodies. But with this revelation, all trust between Roxas and the organization was shattered. He began to question his own identity, unsure of who he was. He went to the one person he thought might be honest with him, Axel, his one supposed friend, and demanded to know the truth about everything. Axel, who had known this information for a while now after diving into the recovered information from his Castle Oblivion missions, refused, telling Roxas that it was better for him to not know the truth about who he was. The last bond of friendship and trust between Axel and Roxas was shattered, and with that, Roxas knew what he had to do. He was leaving the organization to find out the truth about everything. Xian made her way to Twilight Town in order to visit Naminé. She was ready to return her memories back to Sora, but the organization had other plans. They assigned Axel the mission of bringing Xian back, considering her much too important to lose now that Roxas had left. Xian went to confront Axel at the gates of the mansion, where he was begrudgingly carrying out his mission, not because he wanted to bring Xian back, but because he didn't want to lose his friends. And after a grueling battle, Axel did succeed in bringing Xian back to the organization HQ, but he collapsed on the way in, leaving Xian to be picked up by Xemnas, setting her on a collision course with Roxas. It was always her purpose to fuse with Roxas, giving the organization a true puppet with the powers of the Keyblade that they could control. Xian would use this knowledge to her advantage to get what she wanted, her annihilation. The next day, Roxas's wanderings led him to a familiar spot, the clock tower of Twilight Town. He started to despair, having no idea where to go or what answers to even look for. Suddenly, Xian approached him, sitting down beside him and pulling back her organization hood, revealing not the face and black hair of Xian, but the face and brown spiky hair of Sora, the boy whose memories she had absorbed and power she had taken. Xian knows that if she continues to exist, that she will take everything from Roxas, and that Sora will never wake up. Under the ruse of wanting to finish Roxas off once and for all, she challenges him, hoping that he will defeat her and free not only his power, but Sora's memories as well, in addition to thwarting Xemnas' ultimate ambitions. Roxas is shocked and has no desire to fight his friend, but he engages with Xion for his very survival, fighting an armored version of her that has some resemblance to the physical profile of Sora. A climactic battle takes place on multiple worlds, as Xion uses the power of organization machines set in those worlds to transport them there, absorbing more power from the memories of Sora's battles in those worlds. Ultimately, their battle would take them back to Twilight Town, and their final clash would take place in the sky by the clock tower beneath the setting sun. The location of so many memories between the two would be the spot where their bond would be severed. Xion's final gambit to thwart the plans of Xemnas and return Sora's memories. Roxas would strike the final blow, as the two plummet towards the train station square below. As Xion lays on the ground, Roxas is confused. He doesn't recognize her, and isn't quite sure what he's doing there. Naminé told Xion this would happen. Since her entire existence was tied to Sora's memories, so were everyone else's memories of her tied to Sora. If she was to cease to exist and give back those memories, no one would remember her. As Roxas hurries forward to help this fallen stranger, he asks her if he is responsible for doing this, to which Xion shakes her head. She reaches up, hand shaking, to touch his cheek as she begins to fade into particles of light, and suddenly, Roxas remembers. He grabs Xion's hand, begging her not to leave him, and utters the most memed line in all of Kingdom Hearts history.
No! Xion! Who else will I have ice cream with?
She reassures him that this is best, and makes a request of him. She asks Roxas to free Kingdom Hearts, to release all of the captive hearts that they had collected so that Xemnas couldn't accomplish his goal. Her hand falls to her side, limp, as she fades away entirely. Xion was always intended to be a puppet, a tool meant to be controlled, but because of her connection to Sora, she formed her own personality and bonds of friendship, and in the end, that is all she wanted to hold on to. In the end, she knew this was the only way to help a boy she only knew through stolen memories. Roxas would return to the world that never was the next day, filled with determination. With his hood drawn, he summoned not one, but two Keyblades, his own and Xion's, and began to carve a path through the nobodies and heartless who stood in his way. We all know how this plays out. Riku would appear to confront Roxas, for he too had to return to Sora in order for him to be fully awakened. Fueled by the promise he made to Xion in her last moments, he fights Riku, but ultimately loses. Riku takes him to Diz, who traps him in the digital Twilight Town, where he would reunite with Sora 7 days later. So as you can see by the story that I just told you, it's a very heartbreaking tale of friends who want nothing more than to be together, but the forces that be force them apart. And Shion, even not even being a nobody, being a replica, a thing whose purpose it is to be an impersonation of a person. In this case, she was supposed to be an impersonation of Sora, absorb his powers, absorb his memories, so that the organization would have a Keyblade wielder they could control whenever they wanted. Let's talk about the ice cream line, right? Because it's one of the lines in Kingdom Hearts that's made fun of the most. As Roxas holds Shion in his arms, and she is, for all intents and purposes, dying, fading away, he manages to hang on to some memories of her, even though Namine said when she was being destroyed that nobody would remember who she is. Roxas manages to hold on to memories of her. He says to her, grabbing her hand, basically, no, you can't go. Who will I have ice cream with? Right? Pretty crappy thing to say to your friend as they're dying, right? It's like, what an insensitive thing to say. It's not just about the ice cream. Your friend is literally dying. You're never going to see them again. But think about that line in the context of everything that Roxas went through. Day one, he comes into existence. He wakes up as a teenager in front of the mansion in Twilight Town. He doesn't know, he just comes into existence. So imagine coming into existence as like a teenager, like a 14, 15, as basically a high schooler. And you come into the world and you don't know anything. You don't know anyone. You're just laying in the woods and you get up and you exist. Then the first person that finds you is Xemnas, a person that doesn't have everybody's best interests at heart, no pun intended, because he doesn't have a heart because he's a nobody. And he comes and says, hey, I know you're confused. I know you're scared. This is your name now. Your name is Roxas. Come with me if you want purpose. He gives Roxas his name and says, if you want to know what's going on, come with me. I can give you purpose. I can give you meaning in life. Roxas, not knowing what else to do, goes with him. He has no concept of the way the world works, especially friendships, especially relationships, especially bonds between people, which is the core premise of which Kingdom Hearts is built upon. It isn't until he spends time with Axel, doing missions with Axel, and Axel starts to introduce him to things and explain things to him, that he starts to understand the way the world works around him. And one of the things that he latches onto, if you haven't noticed through the story, is that his routine is very important to him. So Roxas's routine is like the one thing that he can count on to be a constant in his life. He goes on a mission. After work, he meets Axel for ice cream to watch the sunset. It's basically Kingdom Hearts The Office. It's basically the equivalent of getting beers after work for Kingdom Hearts. But it isn't the simple act of getting ice cream and watching the sunset. It's the way it's described to him, right? The first day that it happens, or one of the first times that it happens, Axel's like, "We're all right. We finished work. Good job. Let's go get ice cream and hang out." And Roxas is like, "Well, why?" And Axel responds back, "I don't know. That's just what friends do." And that is the introduction to the concept of friendship for Roxas. Throughout his year of existence, Roxas equates friendship with this act of having ice cream and sitting on the tower and watching the sunset with his friend. And by bringing Shion into that group, he's saying like, hey, you are my friend too, because you are sharing in this thing with me. That is what defines his friendships with his friends, is that act of having ice cream after work. So at the end of everything, when Shion ultimately forces Roxas to destroy her for the greater good, and she's laying there in his arms and he says, who will I have ice cream with? His relationship with Axel is already gone. It's non-existent. It's been annihilated. And that's why we see Axel act the way he does in the start of Kingdom Hearts 2, because him and Axel parted on the not best of terms, right? So when he says, who will I have ice cream with? He's basically saying, who will be my friend? I won't have you as my friend anymore. You won't be around to do this thing that I associate with friendship, because Axel and him are not on speaking terms right now. So he's basically admitting that he's going to be alone without her, and he does not want to be alone, which is just absolutely crushing. It's the most crushing thing you can think of. And I get that whole line would be cheesy. Oh, who I have ice cream with? Well, Shion is fucking dying. But it's crushing because it's Roxas not wanting to let his friend go. It's Roxas saying, I will have no more friends. I won't have this bond, this connection that I've come to care about. Even though I'm a nobody and cannot have emotions, he can feel these things because of his connection to Sora. And for Sora to not have his friends is one of the worst things. And for Roxas to lose his friend like this is the worst thing that he can think of. So that is why that line is absolutely crushing. Roxas goes his final days without knowing the truth of who he is. He also forgets his best friend, as did everybody else. Riku, Xemnas, Diz, Naminé, everybody. There is no memory left of the girl named Xion, who was a puppet but became so much more. And she is never spoken about again. In the end, Xion just wanted what all of the characters in Kingdom Hearts want, to spend time with their friends and to share time with their friends. And because of the scheming of Xemnas and the organization, this was taken from her. This is another person who the scheming of Xehanort took that person's life and relationships away from them against their will. Another casualty in the crusade of Xehanort and some Xemnas to achieve whatever goal that they're trying to achieve. It is for this reason that Xion's theme is titled, I'm going to butcher this because it's French, Musique pour la tristesse de Xion. It's her life is a tragedy. Her life is sad because she was made to serve a purpose and discovered so much more outside of her purpose in her relationship with Roxas and with Axel. And because Roxas is connected to Sora, Roxas has the same effect on people that Sora does, and that people want to be friends. They want, his heart grows bonds with people, if you haven't noticed that. And now Xion is another character that's left to suffer at the machinations of Xehanort. And it's just a tragic game overall. It ends with him trapped in the virtual Twilight Town, where yet another person, Diz, lies to him and manipulates him. And Roxas goes basically his whole existence having been lied to, having been manipulated, having been used by other people and not allowed to just pursue the things that he wants and just find out who he really is, until the very end when he no longer has a choice. And I think that is the ultimate tragedy of Roxas. And I think 358 Days does a really great job of filling in this picture and making you feel even worse and care more about this character because, like I said, he goes his whole life not knowing the truth about anything. Even the person he thinks he can trust most, Axel, lies to him and isn't honest with him because he wants to protect him. But in the end, that ends up hurting him more. And if there's one thing that Kingdom Hearts has taught us, and is a concurrent theme, is that you don't lie to your friends. You don't turn your back on your friends. You don't betray your friends' trust because there are dire consequences for it. Riku betrays Sora's trust in Kingdom Hearts 1 and almost pays the ultimate price for it. Lost in the realm of darkness, has to deal with darkness dwelling in his heart now, having to deal with this struggle, this inner struggle within him for the rest of his life, and trying to feel like he has to make up for these actions that he did, which is why he's working so hard to wake Sora up. You never turn your back on your friends, and I think that's just another lesson that Days shows us. It just hammers that Kingdom Hearts lesson home even more. All right, let's dive into the secret reports. And the secret reports in this game are a little more interesting. They're not these lengthy scientific journal entries by Answer Anybody, but they are diary entries by the different members of the organization as the events of this game are unfolding. And I think they're interesting. So I'm going to read them all to you now. There's a decent amount. They're much shorter than the journal reports from the last two games. So let's go ahead and start. I'll start with the top. I'll read down all of them. Maybe I'll stop and interject my own thoughts. At the end, I'll kind of fill in the gaps for anything, and then we'll close out this episode. Day 7, meaning. Author, Xemnas. A name defines an object, describes the span of it, gives it purpose. We embarked upon the replica program to ensure our new power stays ours. Now, our shadow puppet, number I, lives. It needs a name, something to define it, to give the hollow vessel purpose. Day 8, Roxas. Author, Axel. Seems like we're getting a new member every day. Number 13 was a boy, Roxas. Now we've got a number 14, Shion. Today's mission was to show Roxas the ropes. I feel like they've had me babysitting him since he got here. He's not a bad kid, but he's spacey. Good fighter, though. At least I won't be bored. Day 9, On Track. Author, Syx. Shion is being monitored. Roxas, meanwhile, has begun his training exercises. It is imperative that we keep Shion from having undue contact with Roxas until we are certain it will perform as expected, which will take another 10 days, if Vexen's convictions are to be trusted. As for the Keyblade Master, Marluxia will no doubt be keeping an eye on him. Day 14. This kid, Author, Axel. Another mission with Roxas today. Is he seriously my responsibility? At least he's starting to talk like a normal person. Maybe that means his memory is coming back. Still, this kid's supposed to be the Keyblade Master's nobody? I don't see it. Day 15. How dare they? Author, Larxene. Ugh. How dare they shut me out of monitoring the Keyblade Master, and then send me off to teach that half-baked nobody basic magic? I should have had him light me on fire. It won't be long now, though. Once I'm over at CO, our plan goes into action. No more playing nanny. Ever. Day 22. Castle Oblivion. Author, Axel. They push up the CO plan. Our little hero with the key must have made a move. Me and his nobody have been meeting up for ice cream the last few days. Not the best conversationalist, but at least he's mastered a few facial expressions besides doom and gloom. I told him about CO, but he didn't seem to follow. Guess that's understandable. Day 23, Research Entry 326. Author, Vexen. The program is largely on target. Number I, my finest replica, has proven an even greater success than anticipated. I intend to take the other vessel, judged unfit for number status, to Castle Oblivion, where I will subject it to further testing. One thing is clear. Could these replicas not be classified as a special sort of nobody? Day 24, The Upper Floors. Author, Zexion. Marluxia has succeeded in leading the Keyblade Master to the castle. I sense multiple threads at work, but details on each of the projects are scarce. I suspect some alleged organization projects are secretly private machinations. Marluxia seems especially suspect. Day 25, Hollow Ties. Author, Lexius. Pressing Zexion for answers would be a waste of time. I know that, but this dearth of information is hard to accept. What's happening on the upper levels? What ought we be doing down here? They hug their truths close and leave the rest of us to speculate. Zexion talks of the bond we share as an organization, but how could such a thing exist? Still, he remains the only one I can trust. Day 26, Axel's Actions. Author, Zexion. Simple deduction suggests Axel's outwardly inscrutable actions are the result of some directive from Syx. Why else eliminate Vexen? He simply wanted to do research. Did we not all stand to gain from the fruits of his program? What is Axel thinking? Day 27, Organization Dog. Author, Marluxia. Axel is in the way, though I don't know if he's aware of our plot. Vexen had no part in our plans. Why eliminate him, assuming Axel's orders were to root out traitors to the organization? Discerning his motives merits our full attention. Day 28, Dealing with the Traitors. Author, Axel. I've uncovered most of what I need to know about the replica program, but where's the other one? I can't find any trace of it. Vexen was caught in the middle. Pitiable, but unavoidable. I could not risk his program falling into their hands. Of greater concern are the traitors. Not the obvious turncoats, but the ones who will get in his and my way. The Keyblade Master is not our enemy. Day 50, Strange Feeling. Author, Shion. Roxas woke up today. I think he was dreaming the whole time. Being with him feels strange. Familiar, like listening to the waves crash up against the shore. But why? Day 51, Measures Must Be Taken. Author, Syx. The replica program continues apace, but something has gone wrong at Castle Oblivion. The Dusks returned with words that none of those we dispatched survived, but the news came in fragments. I still know too little to extract the truth. I doubt Axel would be among those lost, but I must plan for the worst. First, I must locate the Keyblade Master. Day 52, another mission. Author, Axel. I've lost track of the Keyblade Master and the other intruders. I'm the only one left in the castle. Everybody else has been destroyed. My orders were to end the traitors, but I think by this point, I fit that bill better than anybody. There's one last thing I need to look into while I'm here. Day 71, The Traitor's End. Author, Zigbar. Syx had a hand in what went down at Castle Oblivion. Well, more like a whole arm, which means Axel was in on it too. It's a fact that Xemnas ordered Axel to take out the traitors, orders to which went through Syx. No specific names were given, but naturally, Xemnas knew who the turncoats were right from the get-go. Day 72, Human. Author, Axel. The longer you know someone, the less you need to speak in clear terms. Everything gets across with a wink and a nudge, a little reading between the lines. When it comes to what befell our late comrades at Castle Oblivion, ambiguity suits me just fine. But the Keyblade Master and Roxas come out and say every little thing that comes to mind. Maybe that's human, or maybe they're just special. Day 73, What Now? Author, Xian. I lost the ability to use the Keyblade, and I have no idea why. I don't know what to do about it. About anything. It happened suddenly after Roxas woke up. If I can't collect hearts anymore, the organization has no use for me. This is terrible. Day 74, Xian's Face. Author, Axel. Honestly, I never got why Roxas was so crazy about Xian. I know they both joined up around the same time, and they're both rookies, but how do you get so close to somebody who hides their face all the time? Well, I saw it today. All of a sudden, number 14 up and takes off her hood. Xian is a girl, and she looks just like Naminé. Day 75, Gotta Do Something. Author, Xian. Roxas has been coming along on my missions to help out since I can't use the Keyblade. Axel is covering for me, so I should be safe for now. But what am I going to do if I never get the Keyblade back? I can't lie forever. Day 94, All Goes Apace. Author, Syx. The hearts collected by our two Keyblade wielders, Roxas and Xian, have gathered together, and now Almighty Kingdom Hearts waxes large in the night sky. Our efforts have come to bear fruit, nearly ripe for the plucking. All plans proceed smoothly, alarmingly so. In fact, though this is no time to be deterred by paranoia. Day 95, My Past. Author, Xian. Neither Roxas or I have any memory of our human lives. I don't even remember my first day as a nobody. Roxas said he was the same, but I'm not so sure. For me, it's a total blank. I can't even remember the day I met Roxas or Axel. It's all a blur. Day 96, Friends. Author, Axel. Xian regained her ability to wield the Keyblade. I don't know how or why. Maybe there's more to the Keyblade Master they're not telling me about. I feel like I've been spending more time talking to Roxas and Xian lately than my old friend Syx. This has to have been what it was like. Friendship. Day 97. So bored. Author, Demix. Every day it's work, work, work. I'm dead bored and I'd kill for some vacay. A nobody needs his rest, am I right? And when I get it, it's going to be nothing but me and my sitar. Sigh. Day 117. Him and Roxas. Author, Zigbar. Roxas is maturing at an impressive rate. His face, the way he handles the Keyblade, it's all exactly the same. The world seems so divided and alone, but there's always that steady thread there to connect them. And we nobodies can never escape the things we did as humans. So it goes. Day 118. You've changed, not me. Author, Axel. Talking to Roxas and Xian always brings back memories of my human life, back when I was a kid. It's a weird sensation. I ought to be able to share all this with Syx, but I just don't feel like it anymore. It's strange, but I'm content with just missing what's gone. I'm not the one who changed. You did. Day 119. Hearts and Emotion. Author, Zaldin. Watching that foolish beast flail about only deepens my disdain for humans and their incessant need to be pinned down by feelings. We became nobodies precisely to avoid the shackles of emotion. It was only later that we realized the scale of that loss, that some things simply cannot be done without a heart. Day 149. He's the sham. Author, Shion. That man wearing the organization's coat. That jerk. He's too powerful. I can't beat him unless I get stronger. And I'm not a sham. I'm not. He is. He's the one pretending to be something he isn't. Day 150. Dealing with Shion. Author, Sayx. As expected, the duplicate is starting to show its limits. The program showed promise, but a puppet is just a puppet. Something to be toyed with until it breaks. I'm utterly at a loss as to what Roxas and Axel see in that thing. How best to dispose of it merits my consideration going forward. Day 151. These Dreams. Author, Shion. I wasn't ready to see Roxas again. I can't help but compare us. We both use the Keyblade, but we're so different. Does he dream? It seems like that's all I do anymore. Last night, I dreamt of the ocean. I was drowning. Day 152. Like a real person. Author, Axel. Roxas and Shion must have had it out over something. Knowing them, it's something dumb, but still. Watching them, it's like they're human. It's messing with my head. I kind of wonder if Roxas understood all that about the wrong buttons. I get the sense a lot of it went right over his head. Day 153. This is going to be a hit. Author, Demix. I've got my new hit single. X-Face is always barking at me to work. But what does he expect me to do against a monster like that? I mean, stop and think about skill sets when you divide up the labor already. Day 171. The Number I Project. Author, Sayx. Shion failed to complete its mission. If this continues, destroying it and using the next replica as the duplicate would undoubtedly yield a higher grade copy. Number I was among the initial lot, which naturally raises questions about its capabilities. At present, it is nothing short of broken. I cannot fathom why Xemnas would want to keep it. Day 172. Meaning behind the words. Author, Axel. There has to be something to what Sayx said. Why isn't Shion qualified to be one of us? He said to just look at her, but at what? The fact that she looks like Naminé? Shion and Naminé must be connected. Whose nobody is Shion anyway? What is Sayx hiding? Day 173. The Gamble. Author, Luxord. I find myself envying the children. Perhaps some fundamental difference exists between those who become nobodies as adults and otherwise. The longer you've lived, the more you are positioned to lose with such a gamble. But a child can look forward, unafraid even in the face of immeasurable odds. I doubt they even see life as a gamble the way we do. Day 174. Just a Replica. Author, Sayx. Shion continues to sleep. All analysis of its functions suggests no marked change. The copying appears to be working, but a replica is a replica. My latest report to Xemnas on this net me no clear answers. He simply stood, smiling. At times I find his thinking impenetrable. Day 193. Dreams or Memories. Author, Shion. I finally wake up, just to pass out again? Why? Because I'm a failure? I dreamt the whole while I was out. It was something nostalgic, but what? Why can't I remember? It could be a key memory from my human life. All I can remember is the sound of waves, gentle, in the distance. Day 194, The Replica. Author, Axel. I thought I'd never see the word replica again. Any rational man would realize the Riku replica was not likely unique, but I'm the only one in the organization who knew of his exceptional copying functionality, and that he ultimately formed a sense of self. The fact that I knew all that and still never noticed the truth about Shion speaks to how remarkable a replica she must be. But my questions remain unanswered. Who is she a replica of? Naminé? Kairi? Or perhaps someone entirely different? Why didn't the organization admit her into this membership? And why would such a fine replica fall unconscious or sporadically lose its command of the Keyblade? Day 224. Shion. Author, Axel. Even if Shion is a replica, a puppet, she's still Shion. I understand that in my head, but how do I interact with her now? Riku replica was just a tool, but I can't just use Shion. No, I was wrong to have just used Riku replica in the first place. How is a man-made puppet any less worthy than a nobody that was never meant to exist at all? They're both ambiguous, tenuous at best, and she's my friend. Even if neither of us should exist, that doesn't invalidate the bonds we form. Next break we get, I told her we'd all go to the beach. I hope we get the chance. Our little summer vacation. I know if we can get together and laugh about the stupid stuff, this nagging doubt will go away. Day 225. Secrets About Me. Author, Xian. My body feels heavy and my head aches. I'm too busy dreaming to get any rest from sleep. Axel knows something. He's hiding some secret. It must be in Castle Oblivion. That's where I was born. Day 255. Final Stages. Author, Zemnis. Xian's appearance should vary based on the relation of the viewer to her. Saïx sees her simply as a puppet. The program approaches completion. Through Roxas, Xian is assembling a copy of the Hero of the Keyblade. As proof, she sometimes appears to take on his form to my eyes. Day 256. Who We Each See. Author, Zigbar. Xian's disappearance is fascinating. If she really is breaking from our control, it's a sign of her approaching the essence of the hero. It seems Saïx doesn't truly see her. I'm curious to know how she appears to the others. I see her as him, although I suspect that Zemnis sees entirely something else in her. Day 257. In the Cards. Author, Luxord. The air is charged. I can feel it. You go out on a big gamble at a time like this, and you're going to lose big. That said, it's betting against the worst odds that nets you the biggest win. I'm eager to see how this hand plays out. Day 276. Behind the Truth. Author, Axel. Xian is gone. Roxas still doesn't know anything, but Xian found out. That's why I need to find her. We don't have hearts, so we accept the facts we're given as the truth. But something far more important lies beyond that truth. Saïx would laugh at people with no hearts calling one another friends, but that doesn't make it not so. As the nobody of the Hero of the Keyblade and the replica of that nobody, these two are special, unique in every sense of the word, but that doesn't change the fact that we're friends. Nothing will. Got it memorized, Xian? Day 277. True Agenda. Author, Saïx. Axel and Roxas are up to something. No plot they concoct will change the fact that the organization has cast off Xian, though. Our plans have split, diverged, and advanced now to the next stage. The Number I project and replica program merely paved the way. Our true goals lie elsewhere. Day 296. Hidden Truths. Author, Zigbar. None of us really know everything that's going on in Castle Oblivion. Some rooms even Zemnis doesn't know about. Not many are even aware that Xian was born there. I wonder if the truth about that place will ever surface. Day 297. Contact with Riku. Author, Axel. The man they're calling the imposter, that fake organization member, it's Riku. Roxas could very well remember that somewhere deep in his memories. Still, it's too soon to report this. I need to know why Xian was with him first. If she's siding with the hero, it could easily mean her erasure. What are you planning to do, Xian? Day 298. Change of plans. Author, Saïx. Axel failed to report that the imposter and Xian are working together. Instead, that news came from Roxas. The boy is far more easily handled than Axel, but now Axel has captured Xian and returned her to us. His motives are impossible to read. Our plans can be altered if necessary, but doing so can only delay their realization. Day 299. The Value of a Lie. Author, Axel. Roxas doesn't trust me after the whole Xian incident, but I can't tell him the truth yet. So I keep lying. It's no big deal when you're a nobody. There's no guilt, no feeling at all. So why does it still sting, just a little, when I lie to him? All my dealings with Roxas give me this bizarre illusion of humanity. Day 300. Us and the Sunset. Author, Xian. We watched the sunset today, the three of us. I didn't think we'd ever be able to do that again. It's like that dream I had, the one where I was by the shore with Roxas and Axel, watching the sunset over the water. I just want to stay with them. But how? What should I do? Day 301. Xian or Roxas? Author, Axel. Xian is burning through missions at full tilt. She seems frantic. Why, I don't know. And speaking of, I still don't know what to say to Roxas. Even without my orders from Saïx, I'd do anything to stop Roxas from being erased. I just don't know if I can stand by and let that happen to Shion either. Day 321, My Place. Author, Shion. Axel's always helping me out, so I just assumed he would again. How long has he known about me? Maybe since long before we met in Castle Oblivion. But he told me to think for myself. I was so happy. But now, as I get stronger, Roxas keeps getting weaker. I shouldn't exist anymore. They say that nobodies were never meant to exist, but I'm the real affront. But before I'm gone, I want to help Roxas and Axel, even just a little. I think the boy I saw today is the same Sora from my memories. Day 322, The Plan. Author, Xemnas. Be they a puppet or the hero's nobody, we merely need a functional Keyblade Master. The details are unimportant. The puppet has developed to a point where the hero of the Keyblade may be entirely redundant. Indeed, perhaps we ought never to allow Sora to waken. He cannot be controlled. He will rise up against us. We must move our agenda ahead with that firmly in mind. Day 352, What I Must Do. Author, Shion. Riku gave me this time. Axel told me to spend it thinking for myself. The organization is determined to erase either me or Roxas. They'll never allow us to coexist. I love Roxas and Axel. I'm sure Saïx would scoff at that, call it a trick of my artificial memories, but the time I spent on that clock tower was real. I wish the three of us could stay together, just like this forever. But I have to end this. I'll never forget today's sunset. Even if Roxas and Axel do, I won't forget. Day 353, A Future That Never Was. Author, Axel. I couldn't tell Shion she was wrong, and I can't bring myself to end her, but it's either that or I have to erase Roxas. There's no future where the three of us can sit around and eat ice cream. I know Roxas will never understand. I don't want to acknowledge it myself. Day 354, Where I Belong. Author, Shion. I wanted to see Roxas one more time, but couldn't. What would I say? Did I ever really exist? Even if not, I just hope that those times we spent watching the sunset were real. I know Naminé will tell me how to get back to where I belong. I should hurry to see her. Day 355, Mind. Author, Xigbar. The gears of Xemnas' plans have begun to spin wild since the loss of half our membership at Castle Oblivion. The results are there, but can this state of affairs fairly be called a success? If Kingdom Hearts can be said to possess a mind of its own, it is surely rejecting Xemnas. No, rejecting Xehanort. Roxas left the organization today. Day 356, Unforeseen Events. Author, Saïx. Our plans never accounted for the possibility of both Shion and Roxas leaving. How did this come to pass? When did Roxas grow strong enough to outmuscle me? What were you really after, Lee? We joined the organization at the same time and formulated our plan. At this point, it's just an idle fantasy. Everything changed. You and me. Day 357, To My Best Friend. Author, Axel. Roxas left. It's so like him to just leave that winter ice cream stick behind. Come tomorrow, I'll probably get the order to hunt him down, but leaving that here makes it feel so permanent. I wish the three of us, three? No, that the two of us could share some ice cream again someday. That's what it is to be friends. Day 358, Goals. Author, Xemnas. With luck, we can bring Roxas back into our fold, but even if Sora should awaken, as the hero of the Keyblade, he is bound to keep unlocking hearts. If he should come to target us, we need simply subdue him and use his powers ourselves once more. I must become one with Kingdom Hearts. I will become a higher existence. All of my true ambitions begin there. That is the last journal entry. Couple things interesting to notice about these ones. On day 357, Axel's journal entry, when he says he wishes the three of them could eat ice cream, but then he stops and says three? No, the two of them. It is at that moment that Roxas defeats Shion, causing her to be purged from everybody's memories. So I think that's kind of interesting. A couple of the more interesting ones, too, are the journal entries talking where Axel and Saïx are talking about their old relationship with one another, how they came into the organization at the same time. They were clearly friends before the organization. And in one of the journal entries, Syx even refers to Axel as Lee, which was probably his human name, because if you add an X to Lee and rearrange the letters, it spells Axel. I don't know if we find out Syx's human name in these. I don't remember because I just read off a bunch of them. But Syx's human name is Isa, I-S-A. And if you add X to that, you get Syx. So a little bit of fun information you find out about that later in a couple of the other games where we talk about some organization stuff. So wanted to touch on a couple of those. We get to see some of the journal entries of the Castle Oblivion organization members and how they were very distrusting of each other. Vexen wasn't really on either side. He just wanted to do his replica program, and the replica program was basically this cloning program where they were making these puppets to like clone people and absorb their powers, which is how the Riku replica came into existence in Chain of Memories. Xion was one of the first replicas, so that's why Syx was so adamant about it being broken, because it was one of the initial batch of replicas that Vexen made. We'll talk about the replica program in a later episode, because that's going to actually come into play for like as we hurtle towards the conclusion of the story. I might do a full episode, like just a quick primer on the replica program, just so you guys can understand like what that's about, because we're getting into like copying people and cloning people and like lifeless puppets, and like all these different people are like multiple different people. Like it's starting to get hot and heavy with the Kingdom Hearts lore. The one last thing I wanted to touch on is one of Xigbar's journal entries. I don't remember what one it was specifically. He's alluding to the fact that Xion looks different to people that perceive her, right? So Axel and Roxas see a black-haired girl who looks like Kairi. And Syx, not having a connection to anybody, just sees a blank-faced puppet with its hood drawn. Sometimes Xemnas sees Sora because she's absorbing Sora's memories. So Xion looks different depending on like who perceives her based on their connection with her, right? One of the more interesting journal entries is where Xigbar says that she looks like him. And this ties back to a scene where there was a mission where Xigbar, Xion, and Axel all went on a mission together, and Xigbar basically like tried to take out Xion. And when they were fighting, Xigbar perceived Xion, but she didn't look like Xion. She didn't look like Sora. She didn't look like a blank-faced puppet. She looks like a blonde boy with spiky blonde hair holding a keyblade who looks like Roxas, but is in a completely different garb. His outfit is a little bit different. His face is more aggressive. And one of the defining features on his shoulder, he's wearing like a metal shoulder pauldron, like an armor piece for your shoulder. And if you pause and look at that armor piece, it kind of resembles the style of armor that Xemnas has in the Chamber of Repose. It kind of resembles the armor that the Lingering Will that you fought in Kingdom Hearts 2, the secret boss. So, are we tying this character that has spiky hair that looks exactly like Roxas to have an armor piece to these other armored entities, these other armored individuals? Is this a clue to maybe a past life of Roxas, even though he's the nobody of Sora? Xigbar is attached to things much closer than we realize, to the point where like he's even speculating like what Xemnas is doing and what Xemnas's goals are. You have to remember that Xigbar is the number 2 ranking member in the organization. Even though he doesn't like give out the missions, do anything, like he's still the number 2 ranking member. And it's more examples here that he kind of sees more of the puzzle than we do, than the other members of the organization do. He has a little bit more of a grasp of like what is actually going on. So we'll have to see if what Xigbar knows comes into play here, but he obviously has some connection to this Chamber of Waking, Chamber of Repose thing we got going on. He has some connection to Xemnas' alternate plans, this, the decrepit suit of armor with the Keyblade in the Chamber of Repose. We fight the Lingering Will as a secret boss in Kingdom Hearts 2. So Zigbar is kind of the big question mark that everything is swirling around right now, even though he's not like one of the Xehanort spin-offs, right? He's not Ansem, he's not Xemnas, he's not Xehanort himself, the apprentice of Ansem the Wise. He who is he, and why does he know all this stuff that's going on, and why are all these kind of thread points running through him? So we'll have to see in the future titles if we find out anything more about Zigbar and what he knows. But with that being said, I think those diary entries kind of shed a little bit more light on what's going on. It was always the intention of Xemnas to like have Roxas or Xion destroy one another, and Xion used this to play, against Xemnas, against his ambitions, where Xion had decided to return to Sora. So in order to fake Xemnas out, she basically goes and challenges Roxas to make him destroy her. I know it's a little bit convoluted there, but that's ultimately what she wanted. So in doing that, the organization loses Xion, the organization loses Roxas, and the organization now has to contend with a Sora who is about to wake up. And half of them already got their asses beat by Sora and Riku. So not a good state that the organization is in after Days concludes, and we all know what goes on to happen in Kingdom Hearts 2. That's going to do it for Days, and I would just like to say thank you guys so much for sticking with me on this one. This one's an interesting one. I don't think it plays as well as some of the other titles, but I think the story here is fascinating, and it goes in a direction that you wouldn't expect it to. And with the existence of Xion, it kind of adds another wrinkle into the story of Roxas and makes you feel a little more for him. But we have many more Kingdom Hearts games to play, many more stories to tell, and many more questions that need to be answered. So we're going to wrap it up here, and we will be diving in to our next game, which is going to be a very big one. Maybe one of the most important games in the series, and that is Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. We're going to be getting a lot of answers to some of these more mysterious questions that we've been setting up. Maybe some of these armored individuals, the hidden plots of Xemnas. What was the note that Mickey sent to Riku, Kairi, and Sora at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2 when they were standing on the shore and found the note in the ocean? We've got a lot of questions to answer, and we're going to continue our journey in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. As for Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for coming along on this ride. Really appreciate you guys enjoying these episodes so much. I love talking about these games. I love them so much, and I love sharing my passion with you guys. Always remember, it's not just a story of video games, it is a story of you. And as always, may your heart be your guiding key.